Hey, and welcome to another Main Contain Fishing podcast. As always, on a Wednesday night here out of Southeast Georgia. Tonight we have Mr. Eric Hawks is going to join us. He is a Middle Georgia hammer. Um, I had the luxury of meeting him at one of the live tournaments that I hosted on Lake St. Clair this past year, and my man put up on almost 90 inches on the on a tough fishing day in the middle of the summer. So, with that being said, we're going to kick this thing off. Always make sure you like and subscribe and join the Paddle and Fin Network as well. So, let's get this thing kicked off. Hey, Eric, and welcome to the Main Contain Fishing Podcast, man. I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your evening and joining me on the cast, man.
Yeah, Daniel, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and hey, it's nothing big formal, nothing formal. We like to shoot the shit a little bit. So if a cuss word drops here and there, it's okay. But yeah, it's just a cool fall type of day here in Georgia, man. That weather feels good today, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I actually wore long sleeves to work for the first time, and I guess since the early spring, it seems like probably after mid-March here, I was in a short sleeve, and I got to wear pants to work, but I can't wear shorts. But I've been in short sleeves, for a good while, and it feels good. We was actually in Virginia this past weekend. I'm from Virginia, so I actually got to bring out the Carhartt sweatshirt. It was in the 30s in the morning, so it's definitely here.
Oh yeah, it's and the fall transition. I had the luxury to get on some water the other day, and it was kind of a tough day. I only caught 2 fish, but you can tell the fish are feeding up a little bit. They were little fatties. Um, so the fall transition's finally hitting us here in Georgia a little bit. Getting away
Yeah.
from getting away from them 100-day heat days.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely better times ahead. That's right. I like the colder water fishing down here in Georgia for sure.
Oh yeah. So Eric, what we're going to do, we're just going to let you take over the show a little bit, kind of introduce yourself, how you got into the kayak world, and what you enjoy most about it, and kind of what series you like to fish and things like that. So just take it over, man.
All right. Yeah. So, um, like I said, Eric Hawks here. I was kind of take it back to when I was young. So I'm originally from Virginia. Kind of been introduced to fishing ever since I was really young. My dad traveled and fished some of the what's now the Toyota series, and I guess the MLF. I guess the invitationals now. It's changed so many times over the years, but he ran a lot of those tournament trails back in the early 2000s, or early to mid 2000s, and so when I was younger, I'd I'd go out with him any chance I'd get. But kind of started tournament fishing really when I was probably, I want to say 17. I jumped into some of the BFLs on the boater side, or I was on the co-angler side, but the boater tournaments, and kind of got my first taste there, or a father and son tournament when I was also young with him every now and again. But right after that, I think I was 18. I got my first kayak. It was actually a graduation present from my grandma and dad. They went in together and got me a Feel Free Lure 11.5, and of course that was when I was in Virginia, and man, I put that thing through hell and back on the New River. That's kind of where I cut my teeth really in the kayak world, and put a lot of days on that kayak. I was uh, I was in community college when, right after that, and I'd have class a few days a week, and I mean I was on the river 3 to 4 days a week all year round. Didn't matter if it was January, if it was August, it didn't matter. I put a lot of time in out of that kayak, and that's sort of the first, like I say, the first introduction to kayak fishing, and that was back when KBF was, kind of in its glory days, I guess you could say. They had the first few trail events was popping up, and we had some really big trail tournaments that actually came to the New River, and had some pretty good success in those. Um, I know Russell Johnson from Pennsylvania would come down and take all of our money, but I think I actually finished second in one of those. But we didn't have them but for a few years, and then they sort of branched off, and that was back when they still had a lot of river tournaments at the very beginning, and they sort of branched out and started having like your more popular lake tournament venues is kind of where they went after that. But during that period, I I actually got into college fishing as well. Kind of in the early days of that, I helped start a little community college. Like I said, I was in. We started the fishing team there. Me and a buddy Landon, and fished a few MLF and bass events there, and ended up transferring to a bigger university. Joined the team there as well. But at that time, I ended up buying an older Ranger bass boat, and the motor actually went out on me. I didn't have a whole lot of money in college, so that was kind of a wash the last few years of school, and got out, got me a job, moved down here, and then I got back into the kayak world because I kind of put a pause on it for a while, and that was about 3 years ago. Got down here, and later that fall, about 8 months after I moved here, I ended up buying a Hobie and kind of got really back into it. Bought a motor and went down the whole rabbit hole of spending way too much on a kayak. So here I am.
You could have probably bought a motor for the old Ranger for the price you got in the kayak now, right?
Oh, yeah, you ain't kidding. It's crazy what some of these rigs cost, and I can I I mean, I'm involved as much as any of them as far as that goes. I've sunk quite a bit into it, but I wouldn't change it. I mean, I love it. So
So a lot of people know I came from the bass boat world. You came from the bass boat world.
mhm.
So would you say it? Would you say that is it more laid back in the bass boat world compare or the kayak world, as far as tournament fishing goes?
I guess laid back can be looked at different ways. I'll branch off of that. I'll say as far as getting help or people willing to kind of convey some information. Let's say you're practicing for a tournament, everybody's really tight-lipped in the boat world, especially in a big tournament. And I'm not saying people aren't to a certain extent in the kayak world, but we do. I know everybody says it. We have the camaraderie on this side of the sport, but we really do. Um, it's a lot more cutthroat on the boat world, and I'm not saying that as a negative the whole way, but I think I think some of them guys could probably learn a little bit in terms of just treating people a little bit better, from the kayak guys. I will say that's pretty welcoming on this side. It's just people are a lot more willing to just help you out, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I kind of been paying attention to, they're fishing in the Bassmaster Kayak, I guess, championship on Lake Fork this year.
Hmm.
And a lot of people's already putting information out there as far as trying to get Airbnbs, and people are putting out, hey, I can take 3 more people in my Airbnb, and these guys in the kayak world to me is more friendly. I would
Yeah.
say. Because when you get into the bass boat world, it's a, like you said, it's kind of cutthroat, and they don't want to share a whole lot of information. They don't want to share, hey, I fished this thing 6 months ago and the fish were staged here, or this was kind of technique I was using. But I think us kayakers kind of don't want to be associated with that type of
No, it's
mentality.
true.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's but when you're fishing for $65,000 to $100,000, you kind of have to But what the hell? If I'm catching fish, I'm gonna tell my next buddy, hey man, just throw this. This is because I guess I'm one of the people I always want everybody to catch fish.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, it's definitely a different world, and it going back to you run a motor on your Hobie, I run a motor on my new canoe, and if you have something to go down on your motor, I think other anglers in the kayak world say, hey man, I got an extra prop, I've got let's work on your boat, get it operational where you can fish the tournament.
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah. So kind of tell us, what's the biggest event that you've ever fished?
Um, that's a good question. I guess it was probably well, it was formerly, the FLW College National Championship, but that was televised on the Potomac River up right there at Washington, D.C., the Maryland, Virginia border.
Right.
I did fish that tournament. It was televised. I guess that was technically probably the biggest one I fished.
Okay. What's the biggest kayak series that you fished? And
I fished both the Bassmaster Kayak Series, the national level, as well as the Hobie BOS.
so let me pick your brain on these national level tournaments, because
Mhm.
I have a lot of watchers and listeners that don't fish on that type level.
Mhm.
So kind of break down a fishing a national level kayak series compared to like maybe a local trail or mid level trail, which I would say a state series type deal.
Sure.
Um, because a national level, you're competing with some hammers up there. um, so let's go
Oh,
back
yeah.
to your last national. When was your last national series that you fished?
So my spring was pretty heavy loaded. The last national event I actually fished was Lake Norman, which was first week of April, but I think I fished, I want to say, I think I just fished 4 this year. I was planning on making some more. I was going to fish the Hobie on Chickamauga. That was last month, but I had a wedding I was in, so didn't quite make that one. But yeah, it was the Hobie on Lake Norman. Um, and as far as the national series goes, I mean, I'm not saying that you can't go into a national tournament and do well without practicing, um, but it just makes it a lot harder. And of course, there's a few factors with that. You've got guys that are really talented for one, but you've also got, I mean, in the Bassmaster Series, for example, you've got 200 guys in these tournaments, and you've got limited launch points to where you can go, and you're gonna, unless you have something specific picked out on a map that is a pretty good ways away from the ramp, you're going to be fishing for fish that's been probably fished for the entire week. And you need that practice to be able to locate those fish maybe away from people. You go to practice and you see there's X amount of people at this boat ramp. There's X amount of people at this ramp. Okay, there's nobody upriver. Everybody's down towards the dam. Okay, let me jot that down. Let me think about that. All that comes into play, especially on a multi-day tournament. You can go into a pressured area for one day and make it happen, but it's really difficult to repeat that process that you have to have or have to do in a national tournament for 2, 3, however many days. And that's kind of what separates some of the local trails from the national trails in that aspect. And of course, the guys, I mean, they're really good too. I mean, you're facing, and I'm not saying the local guys aren't good too, because we got plenty of local hammers in these tournaments. Um, but you can get by with a little bit more luck in a one-day tournament on a local level just because it's one day. And it's a lot harder to put the pieces together for a multi-day tournament in a national trail. But like I say, I probably spend, not that it's optimal. I would love to be out there as much as some of those guys for practice, spending 3, 4, 5 days. But just with my work schedule, I try to shoot for 2 to 3 days to get out there and really optimize, get into ramps, kind of having a plan drawn out, whether that's have some waypoints on Google Earth already figured out. I've got the Navionics app on my phone that I'll go in and put waypoints for various types of structure, whether that's a point, channel swing, an area that looks like it should have a rock pile just because of the way the contours are. Um, if I know a fish, should be staging before the spawn, secondary points, just different things like that. And I try to have a plan based on what I think the fish are doing to help me, make the most out of my short practice.
Yeah. So, yeah, planning is a big part in tournament fishing, and when you're fishing, like you said, multiple day tournaments, and you sit down weeks in advance to kind
Hmm.
of look at your navionics, look at other, you know, Google Earth. That when they draw lakes down, Google Maps have a process where you can kind of look at where they draw lakes down, and you can kind of pinpoint structure that's not seen by when the lake's full and things like that. So the next question I have for you, Eric, is when you're breaking a lake down in a body of water, and I'm not talking about rivers because you can't really break rivers down compared to like a lake. So what type of stuff would you do looking for when you're breaking down a lake for a tournament?
Yeah. The first thing really, that I do is I want to know what kind of fishery we're looking at here. I mean, you go down to Florida and you've got your bowls, right? You don't really have creek arms down there. Everything's for the most part contour wise is pretty flat, right? There's no unique obvious features really to look at from a contour standpoint. Now on Google Earth, you can get on there and you can see grass lines, right? You take it back down to the fall, you can see the grass lines. You can actually, especially at Lake Seminole, around Spring Creek, where the water's really clear, you can see the ditches and little creeks that feed in to the main Spring Creek branch right there. And you can learn a lot about a fishery just looking at Google Earth. I mean, I really can't say enough about the importance of being able to understand what you're looking at and being able to understand how to get the correct picture in Google Earth, kind of like you mentioned.
Right.
Um, that's a huge deal, but that's what I'll start off doing. I want to know if you're in Florida, you're probably fishing a bowl. If you're up in the mountains, you're probably fishing some kind of finger lake, mountain lake that's got m- several arms that feed it, and then off of those big arms you've got multiple pockets and coves and little feeder creeks, and everything on the map is about like this,
Yeah.
and so all of that influences it. I want to know, is there what kind of baits in the lake? Do we have herring? So if we have herring, the fish may be more nomadic and be offshore, so live scope might be a big deal. I'll tell you this too, some of the apps that have come out now, they have the ability, like, what is it? Omnia Fishing actually
Yeah.
has the app, and you can turn on the like water clarity feature, and it updates, you know, pretty regular, and it kind of gets you an idea before you get there, what the current water conditions are, and that's a really big deal in the springtime because you can scout out an area, and if you haven't done your Omnia app, looking at that, or going back in time on Google Earth and seeing pictures of that time of the year, what the water color and everything typically looks like, you may roll up to an area and it may be uh, just orange mud when you get there, and then all of a sudden, all that research that you done was really for nothing potentially. If that's not something
Right.
you feel comfortable doing. But I really spend a lot of time looking at the visual things with the apps, with the Google Earth, and with my Navionics. And depending on what stage I think the fish are, by month, if we're having a warming trend, a cold front coming in, if we've got wind that weekend of the tournament, all that's going to kind of influence how I go about my practice and how I try to find fish. I mean, in practice, if it's sunny, for example, and that may put fish under docks in the shade, or it may isolate them to brush piles. midday, whatever that is. If it's supposed to be, 15-mile-per-hour winds with clouds on tournament day, those fish are not going to be acting the same. That may be something that I just ride around and look for fish adjacent to points with my graph and know that, hey, those fish, they should push up on that point when that wind blows in. Just little tidbits like that can also be important. It's not all about getting bit in practice. It's about, looking at what that area that you think is going to be your best area has to offer and just going with it. Because that's one thing in a kayak is, you know, going back to the conversation between a kayak versus a boat, you can't just crank up that 250 and ride 15 miles up the lake whenever you want to. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of strategy in kayak fishing. And I would say there's more strategy in kayak fishing compared to the boat world just because you can scrap things on a dime in the boat world. You can't in the kayak world. You can move ramps, but you better do it early in the day so you can justify that move. So there's a lot to really think about, and it can be a little bit overwhelming if you let it get to you. And, honestly, they say just to keep it simple. And I mean, that's really the best recipe, but I can't help but let some of this other stuff enter my mind. It's just kind of my nature.
Yeah. Well, if you spend a lot of time on the water, and especially, if you're close to big bodies of water like Sinclair and Clark's Hill, and
Mhm.
you're spending a lot of time on that water trying to figure them fish out during certain parts time of the year, certain moon phases, whatever.
Mhm.
And you're like, crap, do I move ramps? Okay, my fish are here in the morning time. Now I've got a 3-hour break before I can catch any more fish. Do I look for another area in that 3 hours where I can load up and maybe take a 20-25 minute ride or something like that, unload and get back on the water in time to catch or cull out some fish that I need to cull, right?
Right.
Um, and so it's like you said, it's not like the turn of a key and that big 250 cranking up and you're running 60, 70 miles up lake or down lake or things like that. So let me ask you this. Do you ever take consideration in moving ramp sometimes when you're not, you say you've caught 3 fish, say it's an early morning bite at that ramp and you've caught 3 fish and you're sitting on midday and you're like, crap, these fish are gone now. Do I move or do you stay there?
Yeah, I mean, I have moved and it turned out good for me in the past, and I've also like at the Hobie tournament on Lake Norman. That was probably one of my worst tournaments I've ever had. And day one, I mean, I was kind of, what did I have? I had close to 80 inches, but Norman's got a lot of smaller spotted bass, and it wasn't a terrible bag, but I also wasn't sitting where I wanted to be. And then day two, I kind of switched my plan up a little bit. I kind of seen the area that I'd fished really didn't have what I was hoping it would have on day one, so I kind of rolled the dice. I went and fished a bridge that morning. Had one really good one, and I could have sit there all day, and had a limit, and probably upgraded, and probably done pretty well. Because actually, a friend of mine was fishing there with me, and he ended up catching them pretty good. But I'd been to a different area and practice, and it was first week of April. We was on a warming trend. There was a full moon. May I think there might have been a full moon. Everything was telling me to go to the bank. Everything was telling me fish ought to be moving up. And of course, Norman doesn't have a great largemouth population, but I went to the back of a creek, and in practice, like 2 or 3 days before, I got what I like to call kind of uh, a false, kind of a pretense of what's going on. I fished some stuff back there. I mean, if you know Lake Norman, it's a dock lake for the most part, and I threw a big swim bait around some dock shallow and caught some decent largemouth back there. And the whole time I was thinking, well, I don't know if this is going to hold up. This Lake Norman largemouth bite, even though it's April, I just don't know if I can depend on that. But I'd caught some decent fish back there, so I went back there. I made a big move, and it was one of the Hobie tournaments this year where you could not use a motor. It was one of the 2 tournaments that they had where you could not use a motor. So I loaded up and probably got to that next ramp by 10 o'clock. I mean, I'd actually still had a pretty good bit of the day left. The only problem was I had a long pedal to get back to where I was going, and I got back there, and it was dead. I mean, it was just dead. There was nothing going on back there. A couple of the guys that was at the ramp with me, good fishermen, I knew their trucks. I looked at the leaderboard, and they wasn't doing well at all. And at that point, I knew I'd made a mistake. And so sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. But it is a risk. And in my opinion, depending on how aggressive you want to be, I'm pretty aggressive with my game plans. I'm usually fishing to win. And you're going to win some, you're going to lose some doing that. But going, going for the win, going for a big bag, that's the way I like to fish. And so I'll take some losses trying to go for, a big bag some days. So,
Well, you fish in them national events and you got 200 people in the field. 150 of them are hammers.
yeah.
And you
Yeah.
know that they're going to locate fish. So you really have to be in that mindset in order to, hey, I've got to have at least 95 inches this day in order for me on the second day to pull a check.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, it's kind of weird talking with somebody that's fished national events because I've never really sat down with anybody that's fished a national event and kind of pick their brain about how national events go on compared to grassroots club stuff, and then even the Georgia Bass Nation stuff that Steve Owen puts on here for Georgia. But yeah, dude, it's you've got a lot of information in your head, dude, and
sorry if I talk too much.
I know, man. It's great because you get people on a podcast like this, and your listeners and your viewers, and they're fishermen too, but they don't know how to go about looking at things on maps, making decisions of making a move during the day. So you kind of get another aspect of another angler and anglers that kind of say, hey, man, this is how the world operates sometimes in the kayak world.
Right.
Yeah. So we're going to pick your brain about the Sinclair event that you fished locally with us from SCG KBF. And how did you decide to go where you went? So just kind of tell us what made, because you fished a river, right? Kind of a river feed, yeah.
Yeah, I was up. I was up. Yeah, I was up that little river arm area around that Twin Bridges.
Yeah.
Yeah. To be honest with you, it was an area that I've scouted on the map, and I actually never fished that far up where I'd went. To be honest, it was a place I'd wanted to check out, and I just hadn't had time, and so I entered the tournament, and I hadn't practiced or anything, and I just went up there and just basically threw at whatever looked good, and it really wasn't going that well up until I think it was around 12. I got along a bank up there, and I was flipping a Texas rig, and I landed I think it was a 21 and a half or 21 and three quarter. Um, and got that fish in. And I mean, it was, if anybody sees Sinclair fish, the fish look about as sickly as any fish, any waterway that you'll ever see. And that fish looked like it was pre-spawned, and that was the third or fourth week of June. I mean, that fish had a big old gut on it, and it was mean and fought, and it was a good time. And I only had 17-pound test, and I really, I didn't have that big of a hook. I really thought it might bend my hook out, to be honest with you. But I got that fish in, and of course, I think that cooled me up a little bit. I had a small fish in my limit, and it was 10 yards down the bank. I caught another 20, and at that point, I mean, that cooled me up. Both those fish cooled me up 10 to 12 inches, I think. And then I think I may have caught up a couple more times, but I rotated through baits that day, anything from a spinner bait and chatter bait. I caught some on a buzz bait to a couple different Texas rig baits, from a worm to like a crawl presentation. Didn't really have one single thing that I relied on all day. The morning I threw the buzz bait around and kind of transitioned as I changed kind of the cover types I was fishing. I rotated through different baits and actually the two big ones I caught was on a D-bomb. So
Yeah. So I used to fish that lake a lot in the bass boat world, and
mhm.
that was always my first run in the morning was the Twin Bridges,
Yeah,
um, because I just had two spots up there that I could catch them on top water, and I was being young and aerogenic. I always like to catch them on top water.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
So, but yeah, it's yeah, Sinclair can. I think Sinclair can make you or break you sometimes, man. It's one of them lakes, all these big reservoirs. If you know what time of year to fish them and know what you're looking for, I think you do well. And then sometimes you're just like, golly, man, I'm lost on this crap.
yeah. That lake will do that to you, especially in the summertime. I mean, I ran into those fish, but I'm not sure I could have done that a second day. So
Yeah, 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 and that and these reservoirs in Georgia, they're recreational lakes too, and you got all these, any given day, Saturday on Sinclair, you're talking probably 3 or 4 bass boat tournaments running out of, Dennis Station, Little Marina, Sinclair
yeah.
Marina. So there's a lot of boat traffic on that lake.
Yeah, and there's a
Yeah,
lot of, like you said, recreational traffic. The jet skis and the pontoons that day in particular were awful. I mean, they were terrible. And I think everybody when we got back to the awards was talking
yeah,
about that. It was bad.
yeah. I didn't venture out of Murder Creek. I wanted to go up to the falls. I just want to kind of sightsee. So, which I caught a few fish up in Murder Creek, and I caught them on a Texas rig. I didn't catch anything. I threw a spinner bait. I threw a buzz bait early in the morning, but I think I didn't catch no fish on a shaky head, and that's unusual. And that's unusual for me, not catching a fish on a shaky head.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. So what we're gonna do? We're gonna take a little break here, Eric. I've got a little commercial break that I need to run, and we'll bring you right back on the show, man.
Sounds good.
Z Pro Lithium right here. So, as you see, they make every single battery you could possibly need for your outdoor adventure, from a 12 volt 10 amp hour to a 12 volt 50 amp hour, all the way up to a 36 volt 55 amp hour battery. They have everything to cover you. I love these batteries because I know when I get on the water, I'm good to go. I don't have to worry about, it running out of juice. It keeps me going all day long. And we're on the water for at least 10 to 12 hours a day, pre-fishing, 8 hours a day during tournaments. And I know I've got the power to get me from point A, point B, spot lock. My electronics are good, and everything is going to be solid throughout the day.
Hey, and welcome back. We got Eric Hawks with us out of where you actually live at, man. Milledgeville,
Milledgeville, that's right. Yep.
Milledgeville, South, Middle Georgia area. Uh, no, he's not part of the insane asylum up there. That place is creepy, dude. Let's talk about that for a minute. You ever been by there and rode up in there?
Oh, oh yeah. Well, my wife's actually obsessed with that kind of thing, as a lot of it seems like women are in general. They just for some reason they just like, I don't
That
know, it's
paranormal stuff.
like murder
Yeah,
shows and just creepy stuff. And so she's actually, we've had some of her friends down here, and like the first thing she'll tell them, well, we have this, what is it, like it at one point was the largest insane asylum in the US, or
that's
maybe
right.
the world, I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah, the US anyway. So we'll run by there, and she'll make me drive in the parking lot, and of course I'm trying to get out of there, but they're like, "Oh, this is creepy," the windows up here, the glass is out here, and just I don't know. It is very strange. If you're ever in town, it's worth riding by for sure.
Right. Let me tell you my story about that place. So we rented an Airbnb when I had an inshore boat, and the family went with us up there to Sinclair, and of course my oldest stepson, he had a girlfriend at the time that came with us, and they were teenagers, and they were like, "Hey, let's go to the old insane asylum." I said, "Well, I know where it's at. I know where Central State's at."
Mhm.
So we pull up there. We're hunting. They said they had a museum. We just wanted to kind of go see what the museum was about, but we couldn't find the museum. So there's a big white building with these big. I'm talking about, golly, them doors must be 8 foot, 9 foot, 10 foot tall. So
Mhm.
we open the door and go in there. We don't see nobody, and it's like old mahogany wood, dark. There's one little light on at the desk, and we're like, "Hello," and nobody answered. And all of a sudden, we all turned to go back out, and the lady popped up from behind us, says, "How can I help you?" We're like, "We're out, gone." Yeah, we
Yeah, I've
were.
done that
I was
too.
like, "No, we're good. We're leaving. See y'all." Uh, but yeah, it's a different beast up there, man. It's pretty. Thinking about what people went through in that facility was, you're kind of thinking in the back of your head, oh my God. But
Yeah,
yeah, let's get
yeah.
back to fishing. We- but yeah, man. So on the second part of the show, Eric, I kind of want to discuss with you when you're going into these national tournaments, even all the tournaments that you fish, mentally and physically. How do you prepare mentally?
Um, I guess mentally, Bri- I don't do anything specific mentally other than, like I said earlier, just kind of prepare for, you know, weather patterns, knowing what the fish are supposed to be doing, and kind of getting all that figured out with my map study. That's the biggest thing that I do to kind of mentally prepare. Um, I try to. I guess when you get in your first few big tournaments, it's always pretty intimidating because you see the names, the people out there that had a lot of success over the years, got a big name, and they're going to do well, and this, that, and the other. But you just got to have confidence in your abilities that you can fish right with those guys, and um, just try to show them, so to speak.
Oh yeah. Well, if I pulled up to the boat ramp and saw Russ Snyder and Casey
Mhm.
Speed and all them boys, I'll be like, nope, I'm leaving this boat ramp."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is intimidating. You roll up and you see some of the guys that you've been following for years and years that are hammers, But at the same time, if you see those guys there, then in one aspect you can look at it like, well, maybe I've done something right in my preparation. There's a reason those guys are here too. So I mean, there's different ways of looking at that, and they can only fish so much water, and if it's a deal where certain lakes, you've got like your pattern lakes, and then you've got what I would call like your area lakes. And in your pattern lakes, that can be a lake where the first dock in the mouth of a cove, or the mouth of a pocket on a major cove arm, you can run that down lake, for example. Okay, and you get bit, and then you can kind of duplicate that, running that same first dock in on the mouths of a major cove. You can do that across the lake, maybe, or the lower half of the lake. And but then some of these lakes, it's you'll get in an area, and the fish will just be biting in that area better for one reason or the other. And so just kind of figuring out what that lake is and what the fish are doing. Just because they're there, it doesn't mean they're going to be able to cover all that water. So it can be a good thing too. It can help you.
Yeah. Talking about patterns, and that's what a lot of fishermen, I think, in their mind, is if I can figure out a pattern, I can catch fish anywhere on the lake. That's not happening. That's not that's just my opinion. I think when you're talking about big reservoirs, thousands of shoreline miles, they could be biting on the bottom of the lake, and you go to the dam end, and you're like, crap, they're not doing the same thing up here.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a heartache in itself trying to figure fish out. So let me take you. Let me get you on in the rabbit hole here in a minute.
Okay.
Do you use either Panoptics, Live Scope? Do you think that you have to have that ability to able to compete on the national level?
I do have I have Lowrance Live or Active Target. I've just got Active Target 1. I use it. I like it. It can get you in trouble sometimes, and it can help you sometimes. And I know everybody says that, but it is the truth. It's a little bit harder to make it work in a kayak. There's a there's more skill involved because you've got multiple things going on. If you get a little bit of wind, and in today's technology with what we have available on our kayaks, typically we've got like a wand that the transducer is attached to. So you have to take your hand off of the reel to move the transducer and face it to whatever direction you're looking towards the fish. And then at that same time, by the time you take your hand off of that and a gust of wind comes by, your boat position is all of a sudden moved. And so therefore that cone angle that's shooting out is also not on the target, whether that's a brush pile, a rock pile, or just a fish suspended that you're wanting to throw to. So what I'm getting at is it's a lot more difficult with you being in a 150-pound kayak with all your stuff in there that gets blown around like a rag doll, so to speak, on the water versus a really big boat. But with that being said, getting a little bit of practice with it and learning your boat and what you can do to make it work. I've got a Hobie 360, and I think as far as live scoping, that's having that boat in particular is one of the best, especially the 360, one of the best things you can do to elevate your scoping game, so to speak, just solely because when I turn that dial on a 360, if I've got a gust of wind that goes this way, I can turn that dial, hit my pedals a couple times, get right back in position, and then kind of do all that simultaneously by casting at the same time. And I can do all that and make really precise movements, and that really helps me. But to further answer your question, because it is so difficult and because we're not able to run around and hit a lot of spots in one day in a kayak, no, I don't think it's necessary at all to compete at the very top level and have live scope. I think it can definitely help you, and there's been several guys that have had really high finishes with live scope. Ewing Miner, he's a great example. Of course, he catches them shallow, deep, live scope. He catches them, however he wants to. He's a great angler, but he's made it work. But then you've got guys like Russ. He doesn't use it that much. Drew Gregory. He don't even know if he even has a fish finder on his boat. I mean, but kind of the moral of the story with all this is you can make it work for you if you know how to use it and when to use it and target certain areas of the lake and certain bodies of water with it. But if you're somebody like Drew, he understands river fish. He understands the whole dynamic of why fish sets up the way they do up the river. And fish do live shallow all year long. They do. They will live shallow all year long. Even in the dead heat of the summer, even in Georgia, when it's water temperatures on Lake Sinclair of 95 degrees, there will be fish shallow on that lake. Now, it may not be the predominant pattern, and you may have to find the correct area of the lake where those fish should be shallow. And there's some environmental factors that you can use to your advantage to kind of help yourself locating them. But you don't have to have live scope to be successful. Not in kayak fishing. Now in the boat world, it's getting to be where you have to have it to compete. And of course, the three major leagues, the NPFL, BASS, and MLF, has come out with their own new regulations with it, and that's going to be interesting next year to see where that takes us.
Yeah, hitting on that spot just a minute. I think the old guys will dominate a little bit more than the younger guys.
It could definitely change up. Yeah,
Yeah,
it could.
like Trey McKinney's and things like that. That kid can read a damn live scope like a piece of white paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just something to throw out there to everybody that you don't have to have all the high end equipment to compete.
No.
Heck, I think Jeff Malott and all them guys, they had a young kid on their podcast, on the Kayak Bass Nation podcast. I think the kid borrowed a kayak and won a tournament and won the Hobie at that, one of the Hobie series up north somewhere. So there's opportunities out there for everybody. Let me ask you about the Hobie series now. Did you qualify for the TOC down in? They're fishing in the Santee, right?
Yeah, that's kind of a sore subject. So
Uh-oh.
I may or may not be getting a call. I was on the roll down list. The top, well, they take 60 some odd people, and I was within 5 AOY spots of making it. And so I'll kind of go back to this. I had 2 good events. They take your top 3 events. I had a good event on Harris Chain, or a pretty good event. I finished like 24th, 25th, and I lost the fish to have made a check. Logan Martin, I had another, pretty solid event, and I was sitting really good in points. And then we went to Lake Norman, and so actually Lake Norman, Hobie wasn't getting a lot of participation, and day 2, day 1, I was sitting okay, and then day 2 rolls around, and of course I get to my second area where I'd moved to, and like I said earlier, I got back there and it was dead. Well, I was pretty frustrated, to be quite honest with you, and I thought at the time I would be able to make another Hobie event to call that one out. And so I actually left with like 2 hours left in the day and just went back home because I knew I couldn't get a check. And I honestly thought with the low participation they had got that at that at that point in the year, that even if I didn't fish um, another Hobie event, I actually thought mathematically I would still get one of the last spots. Um, and then so I left early. And looking back on it, if I'd have caught 1, 2 more fish, I would have probably qualified. But I also thought I was going to be fishing Lake Chickamauga a few weeks back, and I ended up I was in a wedding for one of my good friends down here in Milledgeville, and so I didn't fish it. And as bad of a finish as I had in that tournament, and there's no doubt in my mind that I could have culled that tournament, but it is what it is. But in short story, no, I did not qualify, at least not yet. So,
Well, I was hoping to see you on the leaderboard.
yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I was hoping to go.
yeah, especially with them fishing Santee Cooper in the fall. That's going to be, if the fish don't get battered by bass boats, it'll be a good
Yeah.
tournament. It'll be
Yeah,
a good tournament.
yeah, it could be. That place is it's kind of a strange bird. I fished it, a few times, and I know they had a BFL regional big bass boat tournament up there. I think it was last week, and it was really, really tough. It didn't take a lot to win, and it's kind of this time of the year. I think by the time the TOC gets there, it will have gotten cold enough to have pushed a lot more fish on those trees and things like that. But what's weird about Santee, it just doesn't have many fish in it, but the fish that are in there are big. I mean, they're really big. But I do think it's going to be difficult, depending on how they hit in that fall transition. it could be difficult for those guys to bring in a limit for 3 days. If it was just a 1-day, 2-day tournament, I would say, well, they'll probably do pretty good. But I mean, you could have the winner, you could have the guy that's leading, in my opinion, have 100 inches on day one, and then he may have 220s the next day and not be able to, get a limit. And then all of a sudden he's not even relevant anymore. That's how that place is. It's a very cool place, probably one of the neatest places that I've ever fished, but man, it can really humble you in a hurry.
Yeah, I saw a post from Barry Davis today. He's talking about he's down there fishing the last Bassmaster thing in Caddo Lake. He was like, "Well, it's hoodie weather down here, but I'm in shorts and shivering." I was like, "Yeah, man, he got a cold front moving through." So,
Yeah,
let
yeah.
me ask your opinion on Caddo, man. Have you ever been to Caddo?
I have not. I've wanted to get down there. It's kind of been a very important um, part of kayak fishing, I guess you could say. There's been a lot of the old KBF national championships have been down there. Hobie's been down there. They had the TOC a couple years back down there. It's a pretty prestigious lake. I mean, in terms of kayak fishing, but I've not got the chance. No.
Right. So it's a 2-day tournament, right?
Hmm.
Well,
Yep.
I think it's going to take about 240 inches to win it.
You think it's gonna take 240?
Yeah, I think them fish.
Dang.
Yeah. There's going to be some big bass caught down there, dude.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
no doubt. I
there's
mean,
yeah.
it's a great
If
fishery.
somebody finds them stacked up somewhere, they'll win it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think 120 inches a day will win it.
It's got some big ones. I know that. It's got some giants. I'm I love keeping up. I love to fish, but you got people that, keep up with football and keep up with baseball and, are
Mm.
big nerds statistically with their favorite players. Well, I'm kind of like that when it comes to bass fishing. I keep up with tournaments, whether it's, BFLs and the boater side all the way up to the opens and the elite series and the Toyotas, the invitationals, all those. I keep up with tournaments all across the country. That's just something that I really enjoy doing. And I mean, I'm a bass head. There's no getting around it. So I love following tournaments that I'm not in, and I live vicariously through these anglers on the Tourney X leaderboard. So
Oh yeah, yeah. We got a question in here, Eric, for you. Are you going to be able to make it to Blackshear?
man, I wanted to so bad. That's actually my anniversary weekend,
Oh yeah, that's right. I
and
remember you had
and
something
we
coming up.
yeah, me
Uh,
and it's actually my first anniversary. So
uh,
if I miss that, I may not be married after that one.
yeah,
So
you might be hunting at a doghouse.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. But yeah,
Uh,
it's yeah, hopefully we have a pretty good turnout for Black Shear, and I think it's going to fish well. Even though we've had some good rains and some good storms move through recently, but
mhm.
yeah, I think even if we have 6 or 7, it's just about getting out on the water with people and just enjoying the time and camaraderie, things
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
so
Well, I think it's at a good time of the year. It the end of October, it's starts really picking up. I mean, really, in my opinion, the middle of October through the middle of November, that's a good period, and then it seems like after November, if you keep up with a lot of the local weights at these places, it really jumps after the middle of November. Those fish really start to eat, so it's a good time.
yeah, yeah. I still got my old waypoints from the bass boat days down there, so I might be in luck a little bit.
There you go. That's
But nah,
awesome.
man, it's man, when you get to talking on these podcasts, man, an hour goes by quick, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
But man, you have brought a lot of information and something I'm gonna have to kind of. I've always wanted to fish a national, like just fish one. I just want to
Hmm.
fish one tournament. That's it, just one national tournament. and just kind of, I just want to go hang out with folks.
You were to
And,
jump in next year. I think I'm eager for them to drop the schedules. But being which I know you're down at Savannah, but you're still in a location where there's a lot of good lakes here in Georgia, and even up towards of course Hartwell's part of that's in Georgia too. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is logistically, you're in an area of the country that you can get to one of these national trails. There's definitely going to be some in the southeast, so come on, jump on in, man. It's a good time.
Yeah, I've been talking to Steve a little bit, trying to get Steve to do a Georgia Bass Nation on the Geechee River down here on the tidal water.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, I think that would even for a state level, on a state level series, I think it would be good because you can hold Oconee and what Okmulgee River and things like that,
Mhm.
but tidal water is a different beast to fish. If you
Mhm.
don't know how to fish tidal water, it can really you'd be like dumbfounded.
Oh yeah, I've
Yeah.
fished the James River in Virginia and the Potomac. Like I said earlier, they're
Yeah,
both tidal, and I know all about the tide swings, how that majorly affects the fish biting. And you can go through, at least up there, you can go through the winning area, and if you're there at the wrong tide, not catch a fish and come back and load the boat,
that's
at the
right.
right time,
Yeah.
and that's frustrating.
It is. You're like, golly, these fish are supposed to be staged here. It's on a high tide swing. The water's
Mhm.
rushing back in, or on a low tide swing, and the water's rushing out. They should stage up on this point out of this creek feed in this ditch, and you're like, where the hell the fish at?
Yep.
But yeah,
Yep.
it's I like fishing rivers, and compared to big lakes, I hate big lakes.
Well, I'm with you in a lot. I mean, I grew up fishing the rivers. I
Yeah,
like the lakes too, but um, the rivers. That's where I cut my teeth. I think I understand river fish and current and how that positions fish pretty good, and so I think that fishes to my advantage a lot of times, and especially being in a kayak, you're able to really best use your kayak in a river. You're able to access places that most people can't get to. It kind of brings you back to the reason, in my opinion, that kayak fishing was invented. So I kind of align with Drew Gregory in a lot of those ways. I mean, I am a river fisherman at heart, but I do like fishing the lakes too. So I just like fishing tournaments, man. That's
Oh,
that's I just love competition.
well, yeah, and I talked with somebody else recently about the state of Georgia. We have so many grassroots clubs, and even with Steve running the state series of the Bass Nation is, as grassroots clubs, we know we could all get together as tournament directors and say, okay, we're going to send the top 6 to like a little state championship round, you know,
Hmm.
and do it that way. Just kind of throw something out there different. Kind of throw something out there different to everybody. But yeah, man, thank you for a great time tonight, dude. And
Yes, sir.
and hopefully to see you in 2025 on the water.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I'd like to come out and fish with you guys. You guys get your schedule out. See if I can,
yeah,
get my
I'm
schedule
trying to,
planned out.
yeah, I'm trying to hang tight till the Georgia Bass Nation hits.
Hmm.
That way, maybe one would be like a kind of double dip tournament. Kind of let when you're fishing a grassroots comparable to a state, and you kind of get everybody together and say, okay, this guy's legit. This tournament director's legit. You kind of get more participation throughout the state.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, so
definitely.
yeah, and I'm definitely going to be holding one on Sinclair again.
Well,
So
good, good.
yeah, and so I'll go ahead and break the news to everybody here. We're probably going to be holding 2 with the championship round on Sinclair. because I
I'm
got
not
some other.
opposed.
Well, you don't have to travel no 3 hours, 4 hours.
That's right. I live about 3/4 of a mile from the lake, so I'm right here.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we're just trying to work things out with the Georgia Bass Nation, just making sure, trying to get, I know he's busy doing the last tournament of the year. Then he's got to go out to Texas Lake Fork for the championship in cohorts with the big boys on the Bass Master Classic area. So, man, if you want to stick around till after the show for me, and I want to talk with you a little bit in the green room.
Okay.
After the show, just hang tight with me. And once again, Eric, thank you for taking your time out of your evening and joining us on the Main Contained Fishing Podcast, sir.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Just give everybody your socials. Do you have any Instagrams, Facebook, YouTube channels, or anything like that?
Yeah, I actually don't run a YouTube channel right now for fishing content. I did just get a GoPro kind of up and running. I've been tinkering with that a little bit. So I do have a TikTok, and I think it's Eric Hawks Fishing. I've uploaded a couple of those, just kind of messing around with it. But I do have a fishing Instagram. I just had a personal one, but I just recently, a year or two ago, created a one for fishing, and that's also Eric Hawks Fishing. You can find me there. But yeah.
But yeah, for all you fishing maniacs and enthusiasts and hoarders, I would say fishing hoarders. I'm looking over at my garage here. All the fishing tackle I need to get rid of. But
don't let your wife find it.
Oh, she comes out here every day and says that stuff needs to go.
Oh, I bet.
But nah,
yeah,
it's
I hear the same thing.
yeah. But nah, it's everybody, if you go over and like his Instagram, his TikTok, give him some love. Eric, best of luck in 2025 with you, sir, on the national level, state level, and even the local levels. And we might have you back on about mid year next year to kind of see how everything's breaking down for you, and kind of let you share how your first part of the year went.
Yeah,
if you don't
look forward.
Okay.
Yeah, look forward to it. Just anytime, just let me know.
All righty. I'm gonna shoot you back in the green room and close out this show, man, and get everything closed out here, and I'll be back with you in a minute, sir.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, guys, there it is. There's the juice for Middle Georgia kayak angler Eric Hawks. Y'all make sure y'all go over there and like his socials on his TikTok, on his Instagram, and I just kind of want to reach out and tell y'all, one of our Paddle and Fin members, Mr. Adam, he's from Canada. He had a accident on the water, and it's kind of a freak accident. And we want to send out prayers and love to him. He had a tree fall on him, and while fishing in the kayak, that is a very freak accident. So y'all give him some thoughts and some prayers for him and his family for a quick recovery. Adam, take care of yourself, buddy, and get well, and join us back on the Paddle and Fin family. So as always, always wear your PFD while you're on the water, and enjoy your time this week. I'm fixing to enjoy a day at the fair tomorrow. We got a nice little county fair coming that we always like to go to, and we are going to go tomorrow night. It's good fall weather, and enjoy the fair time. So y'all be safe, wear your PFD on the water, and always fish on.